So hello everybody. Thank you for coming, and yeah, we are very happy that we were invited to share with you our ideas about mushrooms.
Would you like this all to move a bit closer?
Yeah.
We all just,
Yes, would be perfect. Yes, we can make it like more home feel. Yes, intimate. Yes. Sometimes I'm not using these words because I don't know like full meaning of them in English. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So we decided with the handouts you won't have like all the slides because there are too many, but it's like the essence of the lecture, and I think they can work like a standalone material for you, you know, to go through. Everything important is there. So why mushrooms? Mushrooms, we will see later, they are pretty powerful and also like easy to use to those who understand Chinese medicine, because we will see that all of them like share the almost same or similar properties from the Western medicine point of view and Western research. And it's really interesting that the Chinese view, the view of Chinese medicine, really allows us to distinguish between them and choose them according to the patient constitution or to the symptoms we see. So the main today's plan, there are two main mushrooms for neuroprotection, which is Hericium and Coriolus. The Hericium, the Coriolus is very well known under the Chinese name Yunzhi, we will see later. And then there is another section where we can select some other mushrooms according to the TCM constitution, or what we see in terms of the TCM, like phlegm, wind, internal wind, external wind, and so on. And many of the mushrooms also calm the shen, calm the mind. So many of them can be used in treatment of insomnia. And during the sleep, of course, the body regenerates. So promoting the sleep in terms of bringing down the inflammation is also like important feature of the mushrooms. So now about the neuroprotection. So these are the main mushrooms. They both grow here in the West. You might have nice wooden cottage somewhere, and the Coriolus is the mushroom which can bring your wooden structures down. It's really powerful in degrading wood. And the Hericium, it's red listed, so it's you cannot collect it in the wild. And this is a Hericium from Czech Republic, from unknown place somewhere in the middle of Europe. Yeah, secret place, yes. Okay, so these are the names. They have different names, of course. The Houtoukou is the Chinese name, and as you see for Hericium, you have many names in English. All of them are kind of strange, but you know, they are connected to the shape. And there is interesting name that the pom-pom mushroom, it's proper English name, and one of the founders of the mycology research laboratories who are sponsoring this lecture invented this name in the 70s in the US, and it got into the dictionaries because they were growing the mushroom and went to the finest restaurants to sell it, and were saying like monkey head mushrooms, and the chefs were, oh, but we are vegetarian restaurant, we don't sell mushroom heads or whatever. So they even didn't want to have these names on the menu. And one of the chefs came up with a name of pom pom, that it sounds French or whatever. So they started to use it, and then it got to the English dictionary. So it's really interesting. And yeah, Malcolm is not present here today, but yeah, it would be nice to hear this story from him. It's more lively, or he has the personal experience. And the other mushroom is yunzhi. In Chinese, it's like the clouds and the herb or mushroom. So when you find it and look it from the right direction, you see like the shapes of the clouds, or the colors of the clouds as we see here. Yeah, okay. So it's the names. And now here is the main slide, which you already have in your handouts. It's like normally you have all the important stuff at the end of the lecture. And we made it vice versa, and we have the most important slide in the very beginning. And then we will just, talk about the same thing for the rest of the day. The mushrooms, they very often, these two mushrooms, they share the properties which are in the middle column. So they can support the brain. From the Western medicine point of view, they have neuroprotective properties. We will see later in the lecture. And then from the Chinese medicine point of view, they do calming, they calm the mind, calm the shen. From the Western medicine point of view, they both are adaptogens, so they support the immunity, they support the immune functions to get rid of different toxic compounds. So it's like the detoxification. They can be used in fatigue and exhaustion. They have these are Western medicine properties, so they have hepatoprotective effects, anti-inflammatory. Chinese medicines, like everything together. This is how we look at the mushrooms. It's both views together, so they both support all the tongues and really support like the qi of the organs. So they supplement and also do a bit of the clearing, because always a bit of the clearing is part of the organ functions. And from the point of view of nutrition, they have fiber, polysaccharides, and enzymes. And the enzymes are really unique to the mushroom mycelium, because normally what we see as a mushroom, it's the fruit, it's the apple of the tree, but the real mushroom is underground. So, and only when the conditions are like nice to spread the spores, so then they produce the fruiting bodies. So the enzymes, it's really, normally we have like animals and plants, and maybe you don't realize, but mushrooms, fungi, they are in separate kingdom. So they really, in the very beginning of the life, and the life was moving from the sea to the surface, earth, to the ground, they helped to colonize the earth. So it's they are really, it's the oldest organism, living organism on the soil. And there are some general contraindications. You can see them we will see them in some later slide. So now the differences. So hericium is stomach and liver. From the Chinese medicine point of view, it really harmonizes the middle, and especially the stomach. and with sometimes with the E chi, like boosting the chi, bringing it up, it sometimes you are connecting these things with like a stronger effects when using herbs. But the mushrooms, they have really balanced nature and balanced effects, so you don't need to worry too much that it's like a strong supplementing, maybe as would be Huang Qi, for example. So from the Western medicine point of view, the hericium is anti-mutagenic. It has some really interesting antibacterial properties, like against Helicobacter pylori, which is in Western medicine connected with the stomach ulcers. It has antibacterial property against Staphylococcus aureus, including the methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. It has really complex effect on blood sugar, lipids, and the triglycerides, which is the metabolic syndrome, and we will see that metabolic syndrome is quite important in like underlying cause of the neurodegenerative diseases. And there's also interesting thing that there are already articles in the Western science articles that one of the early symptoms of Parkinson could be the constipation and loss of smell. Again, by supplementing the middle and helping to make their peace between the liver and spleen and stomach, we really support also like the digestion. So again, we will not only it has the neuroprotective properties from the TCM Western point of view, but it also hericium has really strong effect on calming the digestion, and we will see this later in the slides, in the detailed slides. Also, we can see that both of the mushrooms like support both or 5 organs, Wuzang. And again, due to the enzymes, it has a really strong impact on the microbiome, so we will see this later as well. And again, that the microbiome influences our psychological profile. So people with compromised microbiome tend to be more depressed, and it works both ways. So when it's really interesting because this good brain axis, by using acupuncture, when we relieve some symptoms of the depression, we are working with the microbiome as well. So it goes both ways. So maybe previously, 10 years ago, we wouldn't think that by acupuncture we can affect microbiome, but it's already proved that it works both ways. So even like walking in the woods or whatever influences the microbiome. So in Coriolus, it's a really interesting mushroom. It's broadly antiviral from the Western medicine point of view. Epstein-Barr virus, human papilloma virus, HPV, or herpes simplex viruses. So that's the Western medicine point of view. And the Chinese, it was mushroom which was very often used for lungs tumors, and it's really good to be used on the terrain of the vacuity of liver, lungs, and kidneys. From the Western medicine point of view, again, there is an interesting thing. It's the Th1, Th2 shift. It's an immunological thing. And it's about balancing the pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory responses of the immune system. And Coriolus, it's really interesting mushrooms because all of the mushrooms we will speak about today can be described as immunonutrition, like supporting the immunity, but the Coriolus would be like really immunomodulation. So sometimes in difficult conditions, when you want to be sure, like autoimmune diseases, that you don't push the immune system to certain reactions, then Coriolus would be like the #1 choice of the mushrooms. And again, it's like really strong feature of the mushrooms when compared to herbs, because even with herbs it would be really difficult to find a formula or a herb which would be so balanced. So it can be used even in chlamydias and palliative care, not only humans but also animals. And there is a specific contraindication from the Chinese medicine point of view in Coriolus, which is weak digestion, but we can work with this. It's a relative contraindication. Yeah, we can combine with something which helps the digestion. Yeah, so when, yeah, okay. And the TCM contraindication for hericium would be early stages of colds and influenzas. There are few mushrooms which you can use even during the acute stasis, acute phases of the colds, but the hericium and Coriolus, also Coriolus, are not among them.
I should ask a question.
Yes?
With the MRSA, has the lion's mane been proven to effectively treat MRSA?
Yeah, that's difficult. Yeah, but still, yeah, it's we would. There are more mushrooms which have the same effect, but it's better to choose them the right mushroom which are you going to use according to the patient constitutions and other symptoms. So it's just listed here to give you more idea about you know, how it works with the even immune system, because it's not fully. There are papers that it directly influences the Staphylococcus aureus, but you know, it doesn't happen in every patient. You know, so it's better to choose from the mushrooms which have this effect, but then according also to the patient. So when this patient would be like the liver and stomach type, yeah, nervous or anxious, we will see later more of the profile of the patient. Then it will help also in other areas of the body, and yeah, the body itself, because being in better condition, it will fight the bacteria. So yeah, maybe some pharmaceutical companies will look into the mushrooms for the exact compounds, yeah, in the future. And there is more. So hericium is about the cognitive functions, supporting the nervous system. When there is nervous weakness or nervousness, inflammation of the digestive tract, heartburn, stomach ulcers, chronic gastritis, you have them all. And the Coriolis, it's like this lungs type, so it's fatigue, chronic fatigue syndrome, recurrent illnesses, and yeah, and supporting the immune system in terms of the external layer. There is one famous formula for doing this, it's the Yu Ping Feng San, the jade screen formula, which is working with the yang qi of the surface, and it's warming. Coriolis is not warming, so it can be used in a combination. It can be even Coriolis used in as a standalone. We will see a case study with a boy. And hericium, when compared to TCM formulas, normally we would think about the Hefa, the harmonizing method in herbs, like the Xiaoyaosan, the Free Wanderer powder. And again, it needs, you will see that there are differences, that you can combine these things together. But for example, the Xiaoyaosan doesn't work with the inflammation of the digestive tract. It's just more on the smoothing the liver. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and you will see there's the flower forget-me-not. So those slides which have the flower, it's for you to remember. It's important, the slide, and it's for us to slow down a bit during the lecture, so we pay attention what's on the slide. So, and now we have like two case studies for hericium, which is from Zuzana's practice. And it's again, it's like the basic, when you can, now we should gain the overview of the two mushrooms and differences between them. And now it was theory, and now we want to bring them into patient, so you can understand how the typical patient for the mushroom would be like.
You see, it was man, 34 years old, and he visited me because of mild digestive problems. That lasted, I think, two months, and he felt relatively elevated appetite and sometimes stomach burning, and he was thirsty for cold water. But main problem was bad breath, stinking breath, and he moved from Italy. It was Italian man 5 months ago, and totally changed his eating habits. Yeah. More sweet and fat and spicy food as vegetable, and he wasn't satisfied at work, and it was different life now. And
we live really terrible lives in Czech Republic
no,
to Italy.
Different than in Italy. And you see, his tone was red, less and dry coating, and according to TCM, diagnosis was stomach heat and liver attack stomach. And first I recommended him one herbs formulas. It was Qingwei San, who purify heat. And then, of course, I recommend him to change eating habits. But he wasn't successful with this.
A lot of beer.
And then I recommended him Hericium to harmonizing digestion and everything what Karel taught. And it was very good choice because he felt much better using mushroom. It's true, it will be better to combine Hericium with acupuncture, but he doesn't able to come to acupuncture, but some choice for acupuncture points was to harmonize middle burner, central vessel 12 or Mu and Shu point, and for purify heat it's stomach 45, large intestine 11 or liver 3, because to harmonize communication, liver and stomach, this relationship between these organs, and it's some points of choice, but these patients didn't come to acupuncture.
And you as an acupuncturist, those points of choice, like describe the effects of the Hericium. It's a Hericium translated into the points, and also into the actions, not only points, but the mode of the action we want to create. And maybe I just again, instead of the Qingwei-san, I can imagine that someone can use the acupuncture, but then there is the difficulty with such a person, because it's like his daily life, he's stressed by his daily life from work and how he lives. So then using the Hericium like between the acupuncture sessions, it helps, it goes in the direction you want to make by the acupuncture, so it's like synergistic effect. Yeah, please feel free to take pictures. You know, sometimes people are scared to take pictures. Please take them.
I remember he visited me 3 times, and he was satisfied with Hericium, and I know it from his girlfriend, because now it's
Yes, so there is another.
yeah. It was very interesting situation. It's about my 12 years old patient. He had various digestive problems, nausea, sometimes vomiting. He suffered from regurgitation of food, loss of appetite, stomach ache, bitter taste in the mouth. He was nervous, tired. His tongue was red, and especially on the sides, it's liver area. Every symptoms getting worse with stress. This problem started when he changed school, and relationships between schoolmates were very bad. And of course, it was good to change school, but that time it wasn't possibility. And his mom asked me for advice, what to do, and we decided to try to recommend him some homeopathics, some herbs formulas, for example, Xiao Yaowan or Pao Hewan, to aids digestion and to help the flowing of liver qi, because this TCM diagnosis was liver qi attack stomach, and liver qi stagnation due to stress. And finally, finally we decided to recommend Hericium. And it's true, Hericium aids digestion, harmonizes stomach and liver, helps inflammation, to expel inflammation from stomach, and tonify spleen, calm the shame, and it was necessary to increase power of stress resistance. And Hericium was good choice because after first recommendation of homeopathy or herbs formulas, he felt better, but not fully. Then Hericium was a good choice, and he was not so nervous and was able to improve relationship between schoolmates.
Yeah, it's interesting because from the TCM point of view, we are speaking about the liver attacking spleen, but also this boy benefited from the Hericium effect on the brain, so it even maybe helped him with the results in the school, so he felt more like secure, found his center. And again, we saw that it's a mushroom for the harmonizing the center. So it's really interesting how the whole personality of the mushroom is fitting the patient needs. And when this happens, the results are really miraculous. So, and there's another.
It's a small boy. He has been treated by Western medicine for epileptic seizures. Before visiting my surgery 2 months or 3 months, and 3 months ago, his mom noticed a strange recurring condition. The boy looked in front of him without reaction to painful or verbal stimuli. And this situation happened 2 or 3 times a day. And after 2 months treating, according to Western medicine, this condition was only twice a week. But it's difficult for him and for his mom. And mom visited me to ask for non-standard help. And diagnosis according to TCM finally was heme deficiency, spleen heme deficiency, and stagnation of liver. And we decided to start with some formulas, basic formulas to tonify nebo to nourish heme, especially kidney and liver heme. It's Liuveitich 1 and some homeopathy. After 2 months, his health condition improved, and these problems occurred rarely. But next year, he started attending the first grade of school, and the mom afraid because this condition is strange. And then we decided to continue with Liuveitich 1 and combine with Hericium for long-term use, 1 gram a day, because Hericium, we saw, supports brain and mind and calm the and harmonize liver. And after 3 months, he was only nervous, without seizures. Now it is Now he is 8 years old. It's in the second class of basic school, and he is without seizures and without medicaments according to Western medicine. And first time EEG showed epileptic changes, but now EEG is clear without these signs. It's for me surprising, but we are happy because it's very difficult for so small boy. Yeah, that's something.
Yeah, that's from this case study we can see how it be really good to that it can be combined with formulas nourishing yin, all different ones. Yeah, or maybe those formulas which would be based even on the Xiaoyao San, like Ikan San, if you are familiar with the herbal therapy. Yeah, okay. So it's like those formulas which bring down the liver wind and liver yang, and in all these cases the hericium can bring there the added value of the properties of the enzymes and really the broad spectrum effect which the mushrooms have. It's there is normally when we compare Chinese medicine, herbal medicine to Western drugs, we can see that the Western drugs, it's like a big hammer, you know, hitting one nail, but very often also the area around it. And that the Chinese medicine for herbal formulas are like more mild and cautious to the environment. And then the same applies, the same difference maybe can be made between Chinese medicine formulas like being the big hammer, you know, hitting the nail, and that the mushrooms, they really have the broad spectrum effect. They are not strong in their effects, but they go through different pathways, and so they can really create big results. Despite not being like strong, it's not a big dosage because it's not a concentrate, it's just the plain mushroom biomass. So it's tiny, you know, when we compare to the standard Chinese dosage of like 30 to 50 grams, you know, it's nothing, but still it has really good results. So now it's just again to remember where we were. So now we are moving to the Coriolis. And Coriolis has really, there are even some studies on the prebiotic effect. So we can see that with the bifidobacteria, it supports, yeah, these are new slides, unfortunately you don't have them. If you want it, please take a picture. So we can see that when compared to the negative control, the group with the, or the patient using, it was like different fecal samples from 5 different persons, and when Coriolis versicolor was there, it really helped to improve the content of these bacteria, which are the good ones. And we will see later one more slide on this topic. So again, just to get an idea about the personality of Coriolis, about the lungs and spleen, but not spleen in terms of the digestion, like more the spleen in terms of yeah, taking care that everything is nourished, that everything grows only to that extent it should be. It's like the maintaining the shapes of thing. So yeah, this case studies now.
Yeah, it's about 8 years old boy.
ill and suffered from sore throat and cough every month. He has sensitive and palpable
Nodules.
lymph nodes and suffered from low-grade fever in the afternoon. Blood test showed high antibody levels against Epstein-Barr virus. His tongue was red, yellowish coating, and according to TCM, diagnosis was weakened čky, defense čky, protective čky, and lingering pathogenic factors, FUSIE. And I decided for Coriolus. At the beginning of the treatment, he used probiotics and some homeopathic drops, for 3 weeks, and then only Coriolus to harmonize immunity, to harmonize liver, purify phlegm, and helps to expel this lingering factor. This Coriolus has antiviral effect, we saw it, and hepatoprotective effect. And it's when we thinking about Epstein-Barr virus, it's good to use something for hepatoprotective things also. And effect was very good. The boy stopped being sick, and lymph nodes decreased, and fever disappeared. It was super choice, I think. And it's possible to make acupuncture. It's small boy, and it's necessary to choose not many points. Sometimes it's good to choose these shoe points or shoe and move points, and special points to strengthen or tonify these organs which works with čky and blood. It's spleen and which produce čky and blood, spleen and lungs, and it's about Coriolus. It's possible to choose some special points for expel phlegm, purify heat. We know it, which points it's possible. And for lymph nodes, it's good to choose between triple barn 5, 10, 17, or stomach 21, especially for lymph nodes on the throat. It's good to choose this ones. I think.
Yeah, there is maybe you saw it that there is really interesting correlation between what the Western medicine thinks about the functions of lympha and what we think in TCM about the functions of spleen. So yeah, it's just an idea maybe for you to look at it more. And there's another interesting thing. In all these case studies, I saw that we are mentioning that the tongue is red. Yes, that works. But with the mushrooms, the tongue must not be red. It can be normal. It can be slightly red. That's a really big difference. Sometimes in the difficult cases, it's sometimes difficult to choose the proper treatment, which is not really strong, but it has some effect, but not strong effect. That sometimes you need to be cooling, but the patient, doesn't digest the herbs pretty well. So in all those cases, like the mushrooms can be combined with the herbs or used as in combination with the tuina or acupuncture or whatever. Yeah, it's a.
I
would like to talk to you about Coriolis. When I saw signs
of lingering this persistent pathogenic factor, it's Coriolis first, which I'm thinking about.
Yeah, it's interesting, like lingering pathogens of like heat and phlegm on the terrain of the yin deficiency. It's Coriolis.
and sometimes it's appear after
Vaccination, heat, of course, and sometimes phlegm and heat, and it's possible to thinking about mushrooms. It's soft, not so strong, and but persistent.
It's interesting that you shouldn't have got the idea that Coriolis is cooling. It's not. It's about the lingering pathogens of heat. It can be used in the heat conditions, but it must be combined with the TCM formulas or acupuncture, to get rid of the heat. It's not cooling. It's really moderate. It's sweet and blunt in its taste, and it's not cooling. So, in Czech we have special road signs. And there are some, so now we have the idea. Are there any questions about the personalities of Hericium and Coriolis? Okay, no? Okay, so now the general contraindications. So the use of the broad spectrum antibiotics, according to some authors. It's because it really has some impact on the microbiome, so it would be the broad spectrum antibiotics can a bit like kill the effect of the mushrooms. So, but it depends on the condition, and it's like relative contraindication. The use of the immunosuppressives we were speaking about. There is exemption of Coriolis. There's interesting thing that even some of the immunosuppressives, like the cyclosporin, is derived from a Cordyceps species, or the original source was. Now it's like artificially produced. So, but we are not speaking about Coriolis, but it's Cordyceps. It's just to give you the idea that the mushrooms very often have in them like something to promote and also something to suppress. So it's better not to use them when there's someone on immunosuppressives. But we have a case study with Coriolis and prednisone. And the use of the antiplatelet and anticoagulants drugs like aspirin, for example, heparin, because many mushrooms have the blood thinning effect, like Ganoderma, which is reishi, auricularia, which is the Judas ear, shiitake and chaga, for example. And also there is, these mushrooms shouldn't be used at the end of the pregnancy, so it doesn't, create the blood thinning effect during the delivery. And in pregnancy and in women who are willing to conceive, the auricularia, the Judas ear, it's really denying the eggs to be planted. So very often these mushrooms are part of the health, it's the frozen food, but the salads, and it's there, and it never lists don't use it when you want to have a baby or whatever, So it's important maybe for you to know that auricularia has this effect. We are not going to speak about auricularia today, but it's just important to mention it. Okay.
Just want to ask if patients using
One or 2 weeks. Yeah. It doesn't last too long. It also depends how long they were used, but yeah, this is nice with the mushrooms. They won't go too far behind the normal, what's normal for the body. My wife, when she was pregnant, she went to the hospital, and they just saw that the blood results were not according to what they wished, but they were even not able to say what is wrong in the blood tests, but wanted to give her a few shots of heparin, or 1 shot of heparin right there. So she managed to refuse it, and we used Ganoderma instead at home. And it was really interesting that with like 3 grams a day, it was like 1 gram 3 times a day. It developed in like 2 or 3 days that when she put her finger in the nose, she already was able to see blood. It was not like a bleeding nose, but it was, yeah, the tissue there was really, yeah, irritated, or what, yeah, it was, the effect was strong, so we stopped using Ganoderma immediately. And she went for a next check like 3 days after we stopped, and the blood tests were already that they were happy about, you know. So this case study is first to show you that it has slow development, so you can, it's before, you know, it doesn't create bruises or whatever. We never saw such a thing that it creates bruises, you know. And you can watch for some other signs and maybe adjust the dosage or whatever, and that it had that it's safe during for the baby and in the pregnant women, and yeah, that you can see the results on the blood tests. It's obvious, yes. So there's one joke that yeah, that women are now really better than men, even in terms of heart attacks. And there are those mushrooms, which is, yeah, sorry for the pictures, but it's Ganoderma, the first one, reishi, the other is shiitake, the third one is auricularia, and the fourth one is chaga. And all of them have really nice properties around the blood and women. So these are like the mushrooms for women. Yeah, because we need women as men, so you know we need to think of them. Okay, so mushrooms, yeah, it's separate kingdom, as I said in the beginning. And from this slide, it's like interesting when you want to combine more mushrooms together. It's really interesting to combine mushrooms from different families or different orders. You know, the higher you go, the more broad spectrum effect it would have, because they are from like, yeah, different places in the taxonomy tree. So we saw here the Hericium, which we see that it's a subclass of the yeah, this mushroom Rusulales. And then we were using Coriolus in the beginning, which is the Agarico Mycetes. So it's interesting that this combination is really, in terms of the mushroom differences, it's pretty far. So when you want to combine them, we will later see it's clever to combine Coriolis and Hericium together in terms of neuroprotection. Then even from the biological taxonomy, it makes great sense. So this slide about the general usage you have there. So we can use mushrooms as a standalone nutritional strategy. We can combine them pretty well with other nutritional therapies or with homeopathy, Western herbs, acupuncture, tchuina, whatever, you name it. Also, Western doctors and the pharmacists like mushrooms because very often they are used like a single ingredient. And you can look for different studies. Already there are many studies, and they can understand them and think about the combinations or the effect with the Western drugs, which is totally different from what we have with the TCM formulas, which are really difficult to grasp for the Western health practitioners because of many herbs inside and many interactions. And there's Hippocrates, the saying, famous saying, let the food be our medicine, and the medicine our food, and mushrooms it's fitting. So there's interesting thing that in Europe we are associating mushrooms with witches. So there is not much evidence on the use of mushrooms, despite our woods are full of mushrooms. So yeah. So now we don't have witches, we have the Novel Food Directive. And so that's the problem as well. There are many interesting mushrooms which cannot be on the European market because of this legislation. Maybe you find an escape way to this legislation, and you can be happy with your herbalist charter of Henry VIII, and incorporated it again to your legislation. That's interesting that we really don't like the herbs, even in the old herbariums from the Middle Age. They were not described properly there. So we need to look for the Asia evidence, but it's interesting that the Ötzi, the Iceman from Austria, was carrying 2 mushrooms, and the scientists recognized there the properties which fits the conditions they think he was having. So it's interesting that before BC the mushrooms were used, and seems so that after the change to AD, we somehow started to fear mushrooms. And it's really interesting because in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the most described mushroom as a toxic was the Amanita, the red one. But it's not toxic, it's hallucinogenic. The most toxic Amanitas, the green one, it was never like publicized by the king or his offices. So it's interesting that we were banned from hallucinogenic mushrooms and not those poisonous ones. That's the European situation. But some of the mushrooms, like Hericium, it's edible mushroom. There's a bit of problem with Coriolus, which some think it falls under the category of novel food, which is yeah, interesting case. And the hericium is a proper edible mushroom. It's really food. So yeah, it's the Uzi. Yeah, we are not in Germany. There's interesting book on mushrooms from 50s in the yeah. So and in Western medicine we are using mushrooms very often like in the symptomatic way, but we have really good mycologists who promote the health benefits of mushrooms. But they are also so happy to talk to us because they know all the substances, but they never know which mushroom they should take for themselves. So we always help them with the choice, or always we help them with the choice, and then they are so happy that they can see the results because they told me, but I was eating this mushroom half year ago and it didn't help me. And we are telling, you know, maybe your condition was different, but now it's the proper mushroom for you. So it's not about the constituents from the Western point of view, but it's really about how we see or perceive the mushroom from the Chinese medicine point of view. There are some interesting concepts in Western medicine. It's about keeping the homeostasis, which is about the body temperature, blood sugar, water content, and ion content. And here we can do a lot with Chinese medicine, with herbs, also with acupuncture, and also with mushrooms. It's just interesting that some of the Western science is somehow coming our direction. And there is another interesting concept that in the old days we had a pathogen or injury, there was inflammation, there was immune response, and the condition restored to the normal homeostasis, which means the dynamic of the health. The health has its dynamic. Sometimes we are more healthy. Yeah, it depends how we slept, what we were eating, what is our psychology conditions. So yeah, so it's the health dynamics. But now very often, and you can name it, whom to blame, whether it's the chemicals in our environment, whether it's the preservatives we are eating in our food, and then they are preserving also our microbiome. So we don't return to the normal health, but we are in sub-health conditions, and it's like a chronic inflammation, chronic conditions. I think it's what we call the Foussier, the lingering pathogenic factors. So it's interesting that there are some, yeah, that it's maybe describing what we do in Chinese medicine. There is interesting article. When should be the break? It's one. Okay, we don't mind to go on without break. You know, it depends on you. It's two of us. We can, you know, switch lecturing. And this article from this group. Yes, please take the pictures. You cannot download this full version, but of course, if you work with articles, there are really nice Russian websites, yes, where you can put there the DOI number or the article name, and very often they have the full paper there. So this is an interesting article which speaks about the dosage and also the concept of the Chinese medicine. And it's interesting that in Western medicine, normally the drug or the intervention has certain effect, there must be a biological effect which they are able to measure. So it must be like strong effect. So it's not dealing with the health in its dynamic, it's really about the disease condition. But with Chinese medicine, and especially with the low dosage of herbs and mushrooms, we can go below what can be measured in Western medicine, of course. With the pulse diagnosis, we can do a lot. So, and here we don't do the immune stimulation. Here is done the immune balancing, the immune harmonization. And there are many herbs which can have this function, like chaihu. In the low dosage, it's like harmonizing, supporting the qi going up. And in the high dosage, it's opening the surface. And the same can be, this is a nice explanation that with small dosage we can do the harmonize things, and with high dosage we can do more we have a stronger effect which can be measured in the biological markers. So when we would speak about the Coriolis, when using it for the Foussier, the lingering pathogenic factor, or lingering heat, you can use it for sleep, for better sleep. In the patients which have the condition as we described, and we will describe it more a bit later. And when you use it in a higher dosage, it will have strong antiviral effect, which you won't see in the low dosage. So it's really interesting how you can do the balancing on the terms of the hidden pathogenic factors in low dosage. And it can be the chronic herpes simplex phase. So it's also the low dosage, but when there is the onset of the herpes, then you need to use high dose. So it's really according to this chart. Yeah, I don't know whether it applies to acupuncture. If you do more with the needle, whether you move. This works for herbs and what we eat. So there is an interesting article on. We already saw the chart from Maria Pintado. It was the chart with the bifidobacteria. So the mushrooms work on the even on the microbiome level, and there are mechanisms of inflammation and its recovery. And we even know that hericium can cross the blood-brain barrier and do there will be more slides about this. So it's really interesting when you choose a mushroom which has strong effect on the psyche as hericium, and it works also on the level of the systemic inflammation, that it works on the microbiome. So this is interesting. There's the article. So should you want to learn more, please take a picture. And now a bit, so we learned something that it works, and now why? The mushrooms are unique that we really can benefit from their enzyme factory that they have in the mycelium. They even can grow towards the direction they, like feel there's something good for them. So they are clever, and so they exert enzymes. And of course they have the content of the micro and macro elements from the Western medicine point of view, but you cannot use them according to these trace elements and whatever. So the TCM concepts are really useful when choosing the right mushroom. And also when you process the mushrooms in low temperature, you can maintain the enzymatic content. And of course mushrooms are famous for having beta-glucans. And there's an interesting thing that there is the constant battle between the natural guys like we are and those who want to concentrate. We call them the concentration guys. And here's interesting chart that there is a mushroom product which claims it's 20 times concentrate. It's the deep dark blue. So really it's like 20 times. But when it comes to the presence of the proteolytic enzymes we have in our stomach, there is sharp decrease and the natural product prevails. So I was really happy to see these results because I had no doubt at that time that in terms of enzymes, because it's hot water extractions, some of the enzymes will be not present. But I thought that those concentration products will beat the nature with the concentration, but it really appears that the beta-glucans which came up from the concentration process are a bit of like naked, because normally they are in the cell wall, so they are extracted, so they lose whatever is around them, and once they are in the presence, in the stomach of the pepsin and trypsin, then they are killed. They have no protection. So that's interesting. It's really strong that we do the holistic approach, we do Chinese medicine, and it's really strong evidence that the natural substances, can really have added value, So yeah, that's it. So there are many slides, and in all of them that's interesting, and I didn't left any, like that I would just pick those who like fit to my ideas. No, in all of them, when in the presence of the pepsin and trypsin, the mycelium biomass is a winner. So it's like all the same story. And the enzymes in mushrooms, there are from 3 main groups, at least as the current status in the Western research. So the enzymes which prevent the oxidative stress, like lactase and superoxide dismutase, enzymes that inhibit the cellular growth, and enzymes that promote detoxification. Yeah, and again, the same. It's just, even in these peroxidase activity, the concentrate has nothing, so, yeah, okay. So we discussed this, and it's interesting. We are happy for having Chinese because the Indians they also described mushrooms. Nobody was allowed to eat mushrooms. Even the Ayurveda has a really nice tradition. So we look to the Chinese classics. Like in the classics of poetry, in the Shriting, there was Fuling already mentioned, and other mushrooms were mentioned in the Shenungpen's Haoting. It's the last one. I don't know why there is not the Chinese name Shenungpen's Haoting. And this is the adaptogenic description from the Shenungpen's Haoting that and many mushrooms would fit or already are in the highest category or would fit into it. So it means they are non-toxic, they strengthen the body and can be used preventively for and have mild effect and can be used long-term rather than curatively, which would mean they have strong effect and should be used only short-term, and are suitable for constitutional supplementation. So that's why also it goes pretty well with acupuncture to maintain and promote health. We have a nice saying that the mushrooms allow us to supplement the qi. So then with acupuncture we have something to work with, you know, and very often there are pathogenic factors like the damp, which is difficult to expel by acupuncture, at least to my experience, or damp heat. And when you choose a mushroom which works with this and supplements the qi and strengthens the immune system and helps the, you know, is fitting the person you see, then during your next session you will be, you know, much further. It's not like 2 steps ahead and 1 back, you know. So that's the, yeah, just for you to, if you are not familiar too much with herbs, so the upper class has ginseng, of course, but the wild one, there's big difference between the wild one. The wild ginseng could decide not to grow for 20 years, and then it starts to grow again. Now the ginseng we have is, yeah, the thing is done in 3 years with a lot of support from the chemical industry. Yeah, so, and mushrooms like lingzhi, which is reishi, Japanese name is reishi, Chinese name is lingzhi, Ganoderma. Fuling, there's no Japanese name, there are no Japanese here, so yeah. And the cordyceps, Tuchung Siatschao. And in the middle class, there is listed the auricularia, the Judas ear. Sorry. Yeah. So in TCM, we can also use the symptomatic approach, like cordyceps for fatigue, but it would be a shame to use it that way. Or we can use it that way, just we think, oh, maybe cordyceps, but then we would think about the syndromology models, whether it fits. The TCM characteristics, so there are some mushrooms which have warming nature, so, and other are balanced, at least of those we speak. All of them, Coriolus and Hericium, they are balanced, they are not warming. So when many years ago, when I looked in Chinese websites to learn more about how they use mushrooms, so I Googled this question, and it's asked, how do you use the healing mushrooms? what's the proper way or what's the way how to use them, and the answer is you just eat them. But so it's big fun, and yeah. So there is a WHO definition of health, which is interesting because it also includes mental and social aspects of the health, and not just the absence of disease. So it's really interesting how our healthcare systems would deal with such a definition. So there are in this British Medical Journal, so it's a really prestigious journal. So the Jedet and his colleagues think that you know, this cannot be applied in the healthcare system, such an approach. But fortunately, also in British Medical Journal, there are some other, and it was a response. It's 2008 and it's 2011. So it took 3 years and maybe really a strong peer review discussion that finally they come out with an article that health may be defined as an ability to adapt and manage their challenges, which is really nice. Very often, even the depressions, it's just not having enough chi to deal with what's coming to us. So there are even like articles that 60 to 70% of all depressions are just chi deficiency. So, of course, the multidisciplinary approaches are needed, and very often in a single mushroom we have already multidisciplinary approaches present, as we prove already. And so now more about the neuroprotection just before the break. So you have something to think about. So mushrooms, and you can digest it more. So mushrooms, mushroom nutrition can help us with their antiviral and antibacterial activity. They have the enzymes and secondary metabolites. It's also interesting that plants which are taken care of by the chemical help, like the pesticides and fertilizers and whatever, they don't create too much of secondary metabolites. And these are really interesting compounds which the plants create for their own defense very often. So normally when we lecture for a full day or several days, there's always in the lecture something about what you can collect for free in the nature to help you. So, and we really feel that it's important to advise the patient to take care of themselves. And I have a strong opinion it's a funny one, that either you have a patient which has money, so then he can allow the treatment, and when the patient doesn't have money, he or she should have free time to go to collect something, you know. When you have a patient which doesn't have a free time and doesn't have money, it's suitable for life change, you know. It's not you know, it's not our profession. They have to take care of themselves. So it's just a joke, you know, but I think there's some truth in it, you know. So prebiotic activity we already saw, and the prebiotic activity is also now increasingly important in terms of the brain-gut axis. There is the Th1, Th2 shift, the pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory immune response of the body. So we can balance it with the mushrooms pretty well. Of course, maybe with herbs, but very often, as we had the hormesis curve, with herbs we often are already in the, let's say, healing part of the chart, but with the mushrooms we are very often or it's in the balancing part of the chart. You remember the chart. So maintaining homeostasis, the dynamic state of health. And we also can think about other conditions which are connected to the neuro damage, or less of the self-repair mechanisms. So we can think about the levels of energy. It might be the ATP or Qi, so in chronic fatigue syndrome or depression, metabolic syndrome, low neurogenic reserve, like cognitive reserve, inadequate or low quality sleep. Sometimes people are even not able to describe whether they sleep well or not. They just speak in hours. I slept for 6 hours, that's fine, if the sleep was fine and sound. But some people can sleep for 10 hours and it doesn't refresh them, and internal and external stress and many others. So this is an important slide, that all of these things can be easily done, all of them, by a single mushroom. And we already saw those two, Hericium and Coriolus. And let me say a few words just still before the break. That really there is a big onset of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And very often they are related to the midlife hypertension and midlife obesity. And this is this slide, which is important because there are and I really like this. It's Vittorio Scalabrese chart. It's from his article on neuroprotection, and how important is the midlife. And the midlife ends at 60. So it's the Chinese way, 120, when the middle is in 60. It's the first 60 years. So the obesity, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, and pathogenic factors are really determining how our late life would look like. And there are protective factors and risk factors. And we will talk about these after the break. And we will mention also some other mushrooms. Okay, so hopefully you will find way back here after the break. Yeah, thank you for your attention. Yeah, thanks. Any questions? Yeah.
Is the lion's mane, is that?
Sorry?
Is it the lion's mane?
No, it's not. Despite it can clear off the inflammation.
Yes.
That's amazing with the mushrooms, really, because to have such an effect you would need, it was there the Qingwei sound. It's a clearing formula, clearing heat formula. And you cannot use it for a long term. But when there is the Helicobacter pylori in the stomach and subclinical inflammation, you need long-term thing. And it's, you cannot use, you cannot use Chinese medicine formulas because they would be too cooling. Yes, or you can use some others like the Xiao Chai Hu Tang, but there is some evidence that when the livers are not fine, it can lead to elevated ALT, and it can something can go wrong with the liver. So it's it's with the mushrooms. It's really important. Yeah, that's a great question. It's a really important feature about the mushrooms, that they can do the cooling and not be cooling. yeah. Okay, so
And we are here during the break, so should you want to ask something? Yeah.
We are here.